Hello and welcome to the Metabolic Balance ANZ podcast. I'm Cherry Wills and I am really excited today to be welcoming somebody in the functional medicine field who I've followed for a very, very long time and admired so much. Dr. Dicken Weatherby. Hello, Dicken. How are you doing?
I'm great, Cherry. Thanks for having me.
As I said, I am really excited to have you. I've been following your work for quite a long time. I remember when I first did my degree in nutritional therapy, and I got your book. I've still got your book. I've got your book right here.
I've probably got my first copy is probably on my bookshelf behind
Yeah,
me.
and
So,
I've got your other book as well.
oh, I
I'll
got
show
my
you
other
that
book.
one. And
Shameless plug.
I mean, because yeah, they were like a Bible for me in the beginning. Just, can you just share what led you to sort of really start looking at that functional pathology analysis?
It's like, gosh, I was thinking about this the other day. I went to the National College of Naturopathic Medicine, Portland, Oregon, started enrolled in September 1994, so 30 years ago. And the first 2 years are deep into the clinical sciences, and I was always fascinated with chemistry and biochemistry and organic chemistry before doing my pre-med. So it was an area that I was really, really interested in. And yet, when we were studying lab science, it seemed to me to be so like there was nothing naturopathic about it whatsoever. It was just sort of straight numbers and all pathology based. And we were having these incredible naturopathic classes, and then we had this one, and I was like, there's something missing here. So it was, I think, in my second year around spring, probably '95, there was a class put on by a guy called Harry Eidner, who's sort of considered to be kind of the grandfather of functional blood. And he did a presentation in Portland. So my buddy Scott and I, who I co-wrote the book with, went to this. And it was a weekend that just sort of blew my brains open. And I look back and it's like it was that moment that my whole I can look at my career that I've had 28 years from that is because of that class that I went to. And it was about looking at the numbers differently. They're the same numbers that we look at on a chemistry and a hematology and a CBC panel, but looking at it from this sort of functional, nutritional, naturopathic, and looking at it from the perspective of not, oh, you're going to, what pathology you might have. It's more about if you don't make changes in your life, this is potentially what could be happening. So the little signposts, measurements of functional physiology, really, and dysfunction, and being able to interrupt it sooner rather than later. And it's from that point I just dedicated my career to that, and I studied it and started. I studied with tons of different people. And then when I graduated in '98, Scott and I sat down, and really there was no one had written, I think, a naturopathically, nutritionally oriented book. And so we decided to do that, and the book's still out there. And from there, colleagues asked me to kind of, hey, I like the book, but can you go into a little bit more detail? So we started teaching classes, and it's just, everything just sort of evolved from there.
I think one of the things I found in those early days when I was like is actually this understanding of the optimal ranges as opposed to standard reference ranges. I mean, yeah, share what your thoughts on
When
that.
you look at enough blood work, like I do, I mean, lab reports from hundreds of different labs from Australia, New Zealand, all over the world. All of the standard ranges are different. How is that possible? We're all pretty much the same we have the same physiological functioning systems in our body, all operating differently according to various different parameters. But surely, if I'm in Boston and I get my blood taken and I'm a diabetic because my blood glucose is X, and then I go over to Los Angeles and I'm not, it's like that doesn't make sense. Plus, the way that they get the ranges is it's all done by mathematics. Most of it. There are some that aren't, but it's all done on population studies, and they literally take 150 blood tests and they'll look at all the ranges. And these are people who don't have any particular pathology in that particular area. So let's say you're looking at a thyroid biomarker, they'll find people that clinically don't have any thyroid issues, and then they'll test their blood and they'll look at the thyroid biomarkers. and 96% of them will be quote unquote normal. 2.5, sorry, 95% will be normal. So 2.5 will be high and 2.5% will be low. And that's the range. And as people have gotten sicker and sicker, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for 28 years, the ranges are getting wider and wider and wider because 95% of us have to be normal. So that was the thing that Harry Eidner said, it's about focusing on optimal. It's like you have to set this definition. And believe me, you go over to optimaldx.com and you want to look at research. We've researched 200 and something plus biomarkers and come up with some very compelling evidence to suggest that if you keep blood glucose between 75 and 86. So I know you're in standard international unit country, but I don't understand millimole per liter. But you know what I mean? If you keep it within that range, you have statistically a better chance of having a more optimal life. And you're not going to
Yeah.
be dealing with all the morbidity issues of blood sugar dysregulation, insulin resistance, and all that kind of stuff. And that's just one biomarker. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember when in one of our sort of our early chats together, you talked about the medicine of not yet. I really loved
It,
that and
yeah.
that's yeah, I love that. Please.
It's one of my early mentors, a guy called Gray Graham, who was part of Nutritional Therapy Association. He talked about what's called the nightmare of yet. And the way the nightmare of yet works is you present to your physician and your blood glucose is 98. It's well within the normal range. And I'm not saying that the doctor necessarily says this, but they're probably thinking, well, he doesn't have diabetes yet. I'll wait until they do because I've got drugs that I can give them when they have diabetes. I don't have anything to offer them now other than diet, but I don't know anything about diet. I don't know anything about food. I don't know anything about nutrition. I don't know anything about herbs. I don't know anything about supplements. I don't know anything about stress management. All I know is that there is a drug called metformin or insulin or whatever. And when that person has diabetes, I know what to do. But before then, we're just going to have to wait. So you can say this about anything. Oh, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis yet. You don't have gallbladder. I don't have to take out your gallbladder yet. But our work is how do we use blood testing and obviously all of the other tools that we have available to us. You put up my signs and symptoms book. Talking and listening to your patient and your client is extremely important because they will tell you things that you won't be able to pick up from blood work. And when you analyze all of those things together, you can kind of get a sense of where they're headed. Wow, this person is headed towards diabetes. Let's stop it at the pass right now with diet, lifestyle, exercise, specific nutritional supplementation if needed. And you have a much better chance of stopping it now as opposed to waiting until they've got full-blown diabetes. And then that's a lot of work. So that's really where that came from. And I've loved that concept. I'm glad that you've picked up on that because I think we can apply that to pretty much everything that we see in clinic. And the idea is to let's get it early so we don't have to wait until you do.
Yeah, I think that's has always been the great sadness for me is that so many people are sort of almost sleepwalking towards this future of just well, of the actual full-blown complications because diabetes you could say oh it's just high blood pressure but actually sorry, high blood sugar but it's a the all of the implications systemically are horrific. I mean, it's an awful condition to have, yeah, for all of the tissues. So again, when we can actually, yeah, just redirect that future, that's how I often like to see it. It's almost like there's a potential for all sorts of things out there in the future for us in terms of the scale of health. But what if we can just shift the dial before we get to a really crucial point that there's a
Yeah.
point of no return kind of thing. But so
But like you're standing at a Y in the road and you've got good health and you're looking down over the horizon, you can see, beautiful pastures and sunshine over there. You're seeing, really pain, morbidity, inflammation, all the possible futures that can happen if you don't make change now. And it's about encouraging the patient and showing them enough signs that, hey, if we make the change now, we have a greater chance of moving you down that road as opposed to the one that you're potentially going down right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that has been your sort of life work as well is linking all of the different parameters as opposed to seeing them all in isolation. Because that's a really standard.
That was actually the one thing that really came from that very first presentation was this concept of pattern recognition and realizing that we live in an interconnected biological metabolic system. Just because you've got problem with your liver doesn't mean that it's not going to have impacts across your body. Of course it is. And so when we look at blood biomarkers, we organize them according to their interrelationships. So it's not just looking at blood glucose, which is obviously a great marker, and patients can even take it themselves in the morning with a finger stick test. But we look at insulin, we look at C-peptide, and when we look at those three together, we can run them through a calculator that gives us the HOMA2 scores, which can look at insulin resistance. And then we can be looking at, other biomarkers like hemoglobin A1C. What's your 3-month window? So when you sort of look at these biomarkers in relationship to one another, you can actually start teasing out patterns of dysfunction that can be emerging. Is it metabolic syndrome? Is it just pure dysglycemia that's not related to insulin? Is it full-blown insulin resistance? Is it full-blown type 2 diabetes? Is it type 1 diabetes where, we've got, no insulin being put out and their blood glucose levels are rocketing up? But without taking that fasting insulin, you don't know. That sort of thing. So yeah, we look at these collections, kidney markers, liver markers, markers of gallbladder dysfunction, and then we look at them in terms of priorities, and we score them and weight them and give a sense of dysfunction, a score, almost like a score, like a scorecard of your liver, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you've just talked about the sort of the blood sugar sort of all the implications from that, but it's across all of the different organs, across all of different kind of conditions that you can really identify so much from the blood that it is often just glossed over or just not even seen by the vast majority of medical professionals, just because they don't know the patterns to look for. At the moment, unfortunately.
Pretty interesting research on my research team is looking at cognition scoring and looking at can we look at biomarkers and what biomarkers have relationships to potentially like that early warning system of cognitive decline. I'm not saying, oh, you have this pattern, you're going to get dementia, but it's like pay attention now to these things and potentially you will have a better chance of an outcome that's not going to be including dementia and cognitive decline. So that's some interesting work we're doing. Inflammation is another one I think is really fascinating. Looking at
inflammation is massive and is the
oh yeah,
underlying pinning of so many conditions, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some very nice, just simple biomarkers that you can look at that can kind of give you a window into inflammation. And it's very generalized, and that's kind of where you need to kind of talk to your patients, look at what their diet is, look at what they're doing, are they getting enough sleep? I mean, there's so many things in our life that are pro-inflammatory that we need to be good detectives in terms of identifying what are these things that the patients or your clients are living on a day-to-day basis, and are they contributing to what we're seeing in the blood work?
Yeah, absolutely. And because I did your practitioner certification course. I remember doing it in your fall of 2019, which was my spring. But I used a metabolic balance client as my case study, and then we had an interview, because obviously to get my certification I had to have an interview with you. That was when we very first actually spoke, I remember. And I think from that point on, I've been, that's where, I obviously brought to your attention what metabolic balance is. what were your first initial thoughts? Do you remember? I mean, like we are, we're talking good
I
for.
mean, I was intrigued, as as a blood guy, right? I was intrigued by the idea of being able to look at blood as a determinant of a program. Um, it's uniquely German, which is wonderful. I mean, I think it's like German engineering. They've applied a very similar look to blood, and then also just the output that they provide. When you're going through metabolic balance. We'll talk a little bit about my experience, I'm sure, in a minute. But it was very intriguing, and that I'm a little bit stuck in the mud, right? Probably took me a while for you to kind of convince me that maybe I'm the right thing for you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, exactly. I think when it's one of those things. I mean, I've been using MB for 12, what? So 2011 was when I first started using it. So yeah, 13 years now. And so initially there is this kind of, is it really what it is? The analysis and then the linking to the foods, that kind of thing. But the more you use it, that's why, I mean, and then when I used my case study, because I was really able to show, how the parameters changed, because we used your software. So just to share as well, Dicken created from his book and all of his learnings, he created this amazing software too for optimal DX and certification, and show and demonstrate that difference. And I remember because we had quite a few like Zoom calls, like and we were chatting and things like that. And I remember early on, sort of seeing you on Zoom, and then I can't help myself because I just kind of like see this potential inside, and I'm like, oh my god, I would love Dicken to do metabolic balance, because like you're, despite everything and all of your learning, you were still struggling with aspects of your health, weren't you?
It's funny. It's like the one of the tenets of naturopathic medicine is physician heal thyself, and I think it's always so easy to point the finger at someone else and go, "Oh, you need to do this," and I have a blind spot. We have a blind spot in terms of looking at ourselves. Don't get me wrong. I look at my blood work 2 to 3 times a year. I mean, I'm running my blood, and I've got tests that go way back. But even for me, it's like, oh, that's okay. Or, well, that's all right. It's not as bad as I think it is, because we can't take out the subjectivity when we look at our own stuff. So for me, it's like sort of handing myself over to you and to metabolic balance was, I think, an essential part of it, because as much as one would like to, especially with the internet and now with AI, right? So like I can type in a whole load of stuff, but it's not the same as having another human being sitting down and coaching you, because that's what you did with us. You coached us. And I think, and that's why I think AI is never going to take away the healthcare practitioner. It just can't. No amount of self-directed knowledge is going to cause somebody to make the changes that they need to do. You need to have that reflection from another human being. And that's why, I'm really disappointed with a lot of medicine in this country is now almost all telemedicine. It's like you don't get to see a patient other than what we're doing right now on a screen. You can't tell whether my skin is yellow. It could be just the lighting, it could be the camera. You can't tell that my eyes might be yellow. You can't tell that I, twitching or whatever. It's like when you're with somebody in a room, there is so much that comes off of that person that we have to, like I said, be a detective. You have to like use all of your senses, and it really disappoints me that we're heading in this direction of reduction, even further reductionistic in our medicine, especially in naturopathic medicine, where it needs to be hands-on. It needs to be. We don't touch our patients anymore. Anyway, I'm kind of ranting a little bit, but I think there were you in Australia, and Angie and I were in Bend, Oregon, and we had. I think even at that distance, and even through the medium of video, it was profound to have you listening to us and asking the right questions, and kind of you hear me talk, and you would go, there's one little thing, and then boom, you went in. It's like, okay, that's important, So
Yeah, because basically when I raised the like idea, hey, Dicken, how about you do metabolic balance with me? I remember also thinking, I need Dicken to see somebody else's plan too. I can't just let Dicken be an N of 1. I knew that wouldn't also be enough for you. We wanted it at least an N of 2, or ideally would have been more. But I wanted Angie, your wife, to come on board too. So, I mean, would you share just briefly the sort of what led you both to say that was the time and
I don't know, Cherry. It's just like, when you look at life and like I said, that change point of doing that going to that seminar in that hotel in 1995 changed my life. I mean, I would say that my life post MB, the weight that I've lost and how I'm feeling in my body, it's profound and has lasted. I mean, I think we started our was I think it was yeah, November, October of this time 2 years ago. And I think it was just sort of that surrender of like, I don't know if you've ever done a trust fall or not. You stand on the stage and go, oh shoot, I'm just gonna fall. If I fall on the floor, so what? I might hurt myself, but I might be caught. And so it was a little bit like that of like, okay, I'm gonna surrender myself.
Yeah, I've got the notes here actually of sort of where you were
You didn't
at
tell me you were
when you
gonna do
first.
this.
Well, you're 6'3", and when you started with me in that fall of 22, you were 260 pounds. And we had, which is 117 kilos, just for those of you who think in kilos. And I remember you saying that your happy weight that you wanted to get to was 225, but we actually put down as your goal weight 235 pounds. And where are you now in terms of that? If we just sort of talked about the weight, where have you found that you've stabilized at nicely now?
Between 215 and 220.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're feeling good at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually overshot. I went as low as 206. That was too low for me. It was in the summer of last year. Went over to Europe, and it was funny. We were traveling in Italy, and we'd gone through all of the different phases and the maintenance stuff like that. And I think one of the things that we both recognized was like the profound change to one's metabolism. And it's like makes the body more efficient at burning fuel. Um, and we were doing some cheat meals here and there. We were eating some pasta and some pizza. But even then, it was like I couldn't keep the weight on. And not just that, it was like less weight on my joints, my inflammation that I was feeling, my sort of more achy that I would get. That I definitely deal with sort of arthritis and some familial. There's a lot of history of arthritis in my family.
Yes. Because that was one of the goals. I remember you saying you had osteoarthritis in your hands and legs.
There, but it's way more manageable than it has. Yeah, and just the energy levels and sleep and just mood. I mean, there's so many ramifications that can happen. Because I remember one of the things that you say is like metabolic balance is not a weight loss program. It just happens to be one of the side benefits that happens, right? And it can become an important thing because when you like at 265 and whatever, you start losing weight, you realize, wait, hold on, that is a possibility to continue to lose weight and experience all the benefits from that. But it's not, I don't think it's about, it just happens to be that's if you need to lose the weight, it'll come off because there's no reason for it to be there. And if you're providing your body with a more balanced metabolism, as the name suggests, you are going to be a more efficient metabolic machine, whatever. I don't like using that term, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's almost demonstrative that ill health does just lead to that unwanted weight creep. I mean, it's a weight creep, isn't it? It just sort of creeps on over time. And when you and that continuous imbalance, that continuous slowed metabolism, where nothing is really syncing and working, well, the weight is going to just hang around. But as soon as we almost flip the switch and get things back into balance, then, well, the natural side effect is that slow decline again to the ideal weight that you really need to be, and then you can hang out there, and the readjustment of the metabolism into being in the correct place kind of thing for you.
I would say it's taken, we're hitting the 2 years, and I would say, um, over the summer with traveling and eating out more, it's like I've definitely noticed that, it's becoming a little more difficult. So both Angie and I are actually on week 2 of a reset. So it's sort of the first time that we've done it. And it's really refreshing, um, because it's like you clean everything up, you can stay more focused, and we're getting that adjustment. It's like adjusting the dial as opposed to like needing to have a big sweeping change. Um, so that was really sweet. I mean, I'm really glad that like Ozempic wasn't around last year so much, because when I went over to England, everybody thought that I was like, "What happened? You disappeared." And if Ozempic had been around, they were saying, "Wait, you're injecting yourself with a peptide, aren't you?"
And I think that's just also demonstrated what I love the fact that you really did, you both of you kind of saw it as the long-term thing, and the natural, I like to call it a flow between the phrases. You never want to just stick to one thing or stick to the food plan forever. That's not what it's about. It's about doing the reset, having a great life, enjoying your travels, but knowing your boundaries, and then knowing when you come back to and get your plan out again, and then you do that reset again.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we've loved is coming back to, our apple in the evening. I mean, something as simple as that. It's like, when you start cutting out, oh, well, we'll have a spread of dessert, or we'll have a piece of this or that. And it's like an apple becomes actually something really significant, in your diet. And I mean, we really enjoy it. We put some cinnamon on, we watch TV or whatever, and we'll enjoy an apple. And people like, go, wait, an apple? What? I mean, anybody can eat an apple. It's like, well, when you eat it with thought and with intent, it becomes something different than that. And food, I think that's the other thing too. I think one of the things that really, really impressed me about metabolic balance was that we actually really started enjoying cooking in a different way. And the people, I mean, I think people often think of, if you're doing a diet program like this, is very restrictive, which it is. I mean, if your food choices have come, but if you can operate within that and build highly nutritious, because they are incredibly nutrient dense foods that you're eating, and if you can prepare them in a way that they taste good with spices and herbs and things, you don't have to use all of the sauces and things like that. You can actually, food becomes very tasty just by being cooked in a good way. And we loved the meals that we prepared. In fact, we would have people over for dinner and we would make them the same food. They go, wow, this is really good. We cooked in clay pots. We, found creative ways of taking a fairly limited subset of foods that you're eating and actually really enjoying the food that we ate. And I think that had a huge, huge part of it too.
Well, I remember you're quite a good cook. I remember hearing. Yeah, absolutely. And as I also, when Angie got her plan, she actually was coming from being a vegan vegetarian for quite a number of years, hadn't she? And when we got her plan, as I talked through with her, it was, well, how about we actually open this out and just see which animal proteins, which fish proteins may be suitable for you, because we can restrict plans to being strictly vegetarian, but ideally we wanted to just say, hey, let's just have a look what comes up, and then you can make a much more informed choice as to what is best for you at that point in time. Can you, I mean, like, I know I'd love to talk to Angie directly, but can you share how that went down with Angie?
Went great.
When I
It was really
yeah.
good. I mean, I think for her, it's a lot of it is how food is prepared. And I think, there's a sort of an animal welfare component to food choices. So it was about sourcing really good sources of food. So if you are going to eat a steak, make sure that it's grass fed and maybe local. We ate a lot of filet, which was kind of fun. I usually like a more fatty steak, but filet was great. And I cooked it in a way that was tasty, and she really enjoyed it. And she still eats meat, and we'll have fish occasionally. Just she's not a huge fish. She likes fish that doesn't taste like fish, which is sort of strange. But she'll funnily enough she'll eat tuna, but she likes cod and that sort of white fish. So we'll have that once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. Um, but yeah, she opened up her palate. And the other great thing about it too is that you focus on one protein per meal. So it's like you don't have to think about like, oh, I'm going to be doing six different types of protein. It's like, no, you're doing chicken today or for this meal, or you're doing lamb or beef, or you're going to do eggs, or you're going to do a legume, or you're going to do mushrooms. And I think that actually almost takes away when you have too much choice, it can become a problem because you start thinking too much into it. But it's like, okay, I'm going to build a meal around chicken. And we built really nice, tasty meals around chicken using the available vegetables and spices and herbs and things that we did. So,
Yeah. And you got back into the kitchen again. I think that's one of the things I remember. It's that realizing that you nourish yourself, you nourish your body from the kitchen, and then you don't need all of the other stuff, the other, anything else going on. And
eating with intent. It's like, when you have the three meals and you're not snacking. And that's what I loved about it too, is like, oh, I'm actually not hungry. Although we were hungry for the first couple of weeks, but I think that, it can be difficult. Yeah, that's the real, I mean, your metabolism is completely reconfiguring itself. But once it is, it's like, I don't need to snack anymore. It's great. Drinking lots of water, which is fantastic. You might have to go to the bathroom a little more than you usually do, but you know,
well, that's
it's worth
getting a
it.
little bit more exercise in your day, getting up from the desk, isn't it? And moving. There you go.
Yeah,
You see?
got the old
Excellent.
water bottle. Eat three or four of
Excellent.
these a day.
Yeah. So the is there anything that you would say really did surprise you about the changes that you experienced? Because I mean, like, I know with MB we put a lot of the pieces of integrative and functional medicine together in sort of one complete package. I mean, we're putting that intermittent fasting, we're putting the overnight fast, we're having the single protein, we're having the breaks in the day, we're having purely whole fresh foods, sleep, all of that. Was there anything that you were surprised about? I mean, like, you've clearly had the results of what I wanted you to see, as in it is almost a life before MB and a life after. I see this all the time. Yeah. Were you surprised at the impact of that?
You know what? I probably was, but I'm like, I don't think so because I trusted you, and you were such a great coach, and you were there every step of the way to answer questions and be present to us, which I really appreciate. I think that was a huge, huge part of it. I think there's two things. One, the coaching that you provided, and secondly, doing it with Angie, doing it with my wife. It's like I think it would be really quite hard to do this on your own, or if you had like three kids at the house and a husband or a wife that didn't do it, and you're trying to do this yourself. We basically went full in, and we did it for 6 months, fully, the whole program, and we saw the results pretty darn quickly. The only thing I'm really ticked off is I had to buy a completely new wardrobe.
Oh
I mean,
gosh, I'm so
seriously,
sorry.
every stitch of clothing I have in my wardrobe right now, I did not own 2 years ago. So it became
Oh,
very
that's
expensive. But
funny.
other than that, it's all good.
Sometimes, but I would say, did Angie, because I know Angie didn't need to lose much weight, did she? She just put a little bit of extra weight on with sort of that menopause.
Sort of reconfiguring. So she lost some weight, but it was like repatterning. And
So she would have got probably back into a lot of her wardrobe, I would imagine. Yeah. Because that is what often happens with, because the last time you were at the weight you are now, how long ago was that then?
20 years ago, probably right after my biological son was born. Yeah, 23 years ago, probably. For me, hitting 40 was and getting divorced and going through just a ton of stress at that particular time. It just wreaked havoc with my metabolism. And, I wasn't conscious enough to really recognize what was happening. And, slowly but surely, like you said, it just slowly creeps up. If you stand on this going, oh, I'm a pound heavier than I was last week, it's okay. But, you realize you're actually a pound heavier each week over the last 10 weeks. You put on 10 pounds over 2 months or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's a problem. So again, pattern recognition, right? Trend analysis, looking and seeing, keeping track of stuff. I weigh myself every morning. I never used to. And it's like, it is. I mean, they say weight isn't everything, but it is an important barometer.
But I think that again is the importance of now. You've reset the body, you've recharged or you've redirected potentially where your body's going to go. We're not just blindly walking into a direction of something because you didn't take that time to reset. And now you're going to be able to be a really fantastic granddad that I'm sure you are. I'm just so excited.
It's just being able to move in a different way and not carry extra weight, I think is really an important piece. And obviously the impact that that has on not just joints and things like that, but I've noticed that my blood work has changed, which has been great. My blood sugar markers were always, I mean, they were always within the, normal optimal ranges, but they've definitely kind of coming back to much, much more consistent the way they probably were 20 or 30 years ago. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah. And where's the direction for you now as well with your work? I'm just being nosy now because I'm just like so keen to know what are you work. I know you've mentioned a few research studies that you're working on and things like that.
Yeah, we're working on longevity studies. Really, it's become sort of quite an important area, I think, for people to recognize around sort of biological age and things like that. So we're going to be doing a report on that, which is pretty cool. Still staying very, very much in the blood world, but I think it's kind of diving a little bit deeper, probably into more advanced systems, doing a more in-depth look at thyroid or cardiovascular health and things like that. Um, yeah, I think, just providing practice. We work directly with practitioners, so we're practitioner to practitioner, B2B, so to speak, and help. Our goal is to help make your lives more effective, more efficient, so that you can be more effective and efficient with your patients and your clients, so that you can help them achieve without you being stressed. Because I know I'm not actually in practice right now. I haven't been for a very long time, but I do see the effects that the modern practice has on practitioners is really hard. It's really, really tough. And the expectations that patients have.
Yeah, I think the metabolic balance in practice is such a similar. It's a the value of the tool of ODX like what you do and metabolic balance, those two together is such an amazing combination of really supporting practitioners and physicians to just make that impact that we want to make. That real redirection, changing things so that people can have a better future.
I mean, I think one of the things too, I think from my own experience of going through this is realizing how powerful food is. And I think as nutritionists, naturopaths, whatever, the tendency sometimes is to want to substitute a pharmaceutical with a supplement. And don't get me wrong, I think there's clearly case studies where supplements are really, really helpful. But by bringing food really back into the picture and allowing your patients and clients to have a different relationship with food than they might have had in the past, I think is invaluable. And it's not just the short-term relationship. It's a like you said, it's like life before MB, life after MB. I think for me, it's like my relationship to food is very different. I'm much more conscious. I'm more intentful. I'm more present to what I'm eating and when I'm eating and how I'm eating, and what I'm putting into my body. I think before than I was before, and I think that's a beautiful gift that you can give patients to have a new relationship because food is a difficult thing for a lot of people. You know, it's a minefield, yeah, and let alone the sort of mental emotional relationship that people have with food as well. And so, by I think really getting getting all the clutter and the interference out the way and focusing in on 3 meals, 9 proteins, whatever, and just build your meals that way. It's just and just doing it, yeah, and being very conscious too. I think the other thing that I wanted to bring up is we don't need to eat as much as we do. We really don't. The amount of calories that, I mean, I say loosely whatever, we don't need to eat as much calories as we do. We really don't. And I think that's an important piece too. It's becoming actually a different relationship to the energy that you're putting into your body through the food that you're eating. And when you're eating good, solid, nutrient-dense food, you don't have to eat as much of it. And when it's got lots of fiber, you can feel very full and very satisfied and enjoy that apple as a dessert in the evening. You don't need a piece of pie. You don't need cookies. You don't need, all the other stuff, ice cream, whatever. It's like you don't even crave it anymore. Why would you do that? Yeah. So it's very cool.
Yeah, no, I think you've just summed it up all so beautifully for me there. I mean, and I just
Well,
am
I'm just so
thrilled.
grateful, Sherry, for you for having persistence and kind of kept knocking at my door. The long arm reaching across the international date
I
line
know,
to
yeah, I knew I had to
Oregon.
find the right time too. I mean, there was a bit of a delay. I know when but we got there.
We got there,
And
and
the
that's the
and the
important
thing
thing.
is, yeah, that's absolutely it. And the thing is, I love the fact that you know 2 years down the line, you're just getting stronger and stronger with it. And that's actually the same with me. I'm 13 years down the line, and I know my health is a completely different place than it would be otherwise. Absolutely chalk and cheese kind of thing. So, yeah, it's fantastic, and yeah, a big thank you. I would love to invite you back, Dicken. We
Yeah, we should. I'd love that. We could talk about anything around all of this, and I think there's important work to be done. Cool, sweet.
and thank you so much, and I'll put links as well for people to find your website too in the show notes.
We have a 2 blogs, just a ton of research work that we're doing here. So have at it. Go enjoy the free stuff that we produce too. It's important.
And yeah, there's so much incredible work happening in the personalized nutrition fields and the functional health fields. It's really exciting where it can go, and it's just keeping people aware,
Yeah,
getting
no,
that
it is
awareness
absolutely. Yeah,
back again.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be
It's,
complicated. It really doesn't. It
oh,
doesn't.
and that's I think where
Yeah,
metabolic balance comes in. It
yeah,
just clarifies it all, so it
yeah,
isn't complicated.
yeah. Keep it simple,
That's
stupid.
yeah, that's it. Amazing. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dickon.
You're very welcome, Cherry. Thanks for having me on, and yeah, we'll do this again sometime.
Awesome.